Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 3, Part 3. This was game indeed to us, but this was no food, and I was very sorry to lose 3 charges of powder and shot upon a creature that was good for nothing to us. However, Jury said he would have some of him. So he comes on board and asked me to give him the hatchet. For what, Jury? Said I. Me cut off his head, said he. However, Jury could not cut off his head, but he cut off a foot and brought it with him, and it was monstrous great. I bethought myself, however, that perhaps the skin of him might one way or other be of some value to us, and I resolved to take off his skin if I could. So Jury and I went to work with him, but Jury was much the better workman at it, for I knew very ill how to do it. Indeed, it took us both the whole day, but at last we got the hide of him, and spreading it on the top of our cabin, the sun effectually dried it in 2 days' time, and it afterwards served me to lie upon. After this stop, we made up to the southward, continually for 10 or 12 days, living very sparingly on our provisions, which began to abate very much, and going no oftener into the shore than we were obliged to for fresh water. My design in this way to make the river Gambia or Senegal, that is to say, anywhere near the Cape de Verde, where I was in hopes to meet with some European ship, and if I did not, I knew not what course I had to take, but to seek out for the islands or perish there among the negroes. I knew that all the ships from Europe which sailed either to the coast of Guinea or to Brazil or to the East Indies made this cape, or those islands. And in a word, I put the whole of my fortune upon this single point, either that I must meet with some ship or perish. When I had pursued this resolution about 10 days longer, as I have said, I began to see the land was inhabited, and in 2 or 3 places as we sailed by, we saw people stand upon the shore to look at us. We could also perceive they were quite black and stark naked. I was once inclined to have gone on shore to them, but Jury was my better counselor, and said to me, "No go, no go." However, I hauled in nearer the shore that I might talk to them, and I found they ran along the shore by me a good way. I observed they had no weapons in their hands except one who had a long, slender stick, which Jury said was a lance, and that they would throw them a great way with good aim. So I kept at a distance, but talked with them by signs as well as I could, and particularly made signs for something to eat. They beckoned me to stop my boat, and that they would fetch me some meat. Upon this, I lowered the top of my sail and lay by, and 2 of them ran up into the country, and in less than half an hour came back, and brought with them 2 pieces of dried flesh and some corn, such as is the produce of their country. But we neither knew what the one or the other was. However, we were willing to accept it, but how to come at it was our next dispute. For I was not for venturing on shore to them, and they were as much afraid of us. But they took a safe way for us all, for they brought it to the shore and laid it down, and went and stood a great way off till we fetched it on board, and then came close to us again. We made signs of thanks to them, for we had nothing to make them amends. But an opportunity offered that very instant to oblige them wonderfully. For while we were lying by the shore came 2 mighty creatures, one pursuing the other as we took it, with great fury from the mountains towards the sea. Whether it was the male pursuing the female, or whether they were in sport or in a rage, we could not tell any more than we could tell whether it was usual or strange. But I believe it was the latter, because in the first place, those ravenous creatures seldom appear but in the night, and in the second place, we found the people terribly frightened, especially the women. The man that had the lance or dart did not fly from them, but the rest did. However, as the 2 creatures ran directly into the water, they did not seem to offer to fall upon any of the negroes, but plunged themselves into the sea and swam about, as if they had come for their diversion. At last one of them began to come nearer our boat than at first I expected. But I lay ready for him, for I had loaded my gun with all possible expedition, and bade Jury load both the others. As soon as he came fairly within my reach, I fired and shot him directly into the head. Immediately he sunk down into the water, but rose instantly, and plunged up and down as if struggling for life, and so indeed he was. He immediately made to shore, but between the wound, which was his mortal hurt, and the strangling of the water, he died just before he reached the shore. It is impossible to express the astonishment of these poor creatures at the noise and the fire of my gun. Some of them were ready to die for fear, and fell down as dead with the very terror. But when they saw the creature dead and sunk in the water, and that I made signs to them to come to the shore, they took heart and came to the shore and began to search for the creature. I found him by his blood staining the water, and by the help of a rope which I slung round him and gave the negroes to haul, they dragged him on the shore, and found that it was a most curious leopard, spotted and fine to an admirable degree. And the negroes held up their hands with admiration to think that I had killed him. The other creature, frightened with the flash of fire and the noise of the gun, swam on shore and ran up directly to the mountains from whence they came. Nor could I, at that distance, know what it was. I found quickly the negroes were for eating the flesh of this creature, so I was willing to have them take it as a favor from me, which, when I made signs to them that they might take it, they were very thankful for. Immediately they fell to work with him, and though they had no knife, yet with a sharpened piece of wood, they took off his skin as readily, and much more readily than we could have done with a knife. They offered me some of the flesh, which I declined, making as if I would give it them, but made signs for the skin, which they gave me freely, and brought me a great deal more of their provisions, which, though I did not understand, yet I accepted. Then I made signs to them for some water, and held out one of my jars to them, turning it bottom upward to show that it was empty, and that I wanted to have it filled. They called immediately to some of their friends, and there came two women, and brought a great vessel made of earth, and burnt, as I suppose, in the sun. This they set down for me as before, and I sent Jury on shore with my jars and filled them all three. The women were as stark naked as the men. I was now furnished with roots and corn, such as it was, and water, and leaving my friendly negroes, I made forward for about 11 days more, without offering to go near the shore, till I saw the land run out a great length into the sea, at about the distance of 4 or 5 leagues before me, and the sea being very calm. I kept a large offing to make this point, and at length doubled the point at about 2 leagues from the land. I saw plainly land on the other side, to seaward. Then I concluded, as it was most certain indeed, that this was the Cape de Verde, and those islands, called from thence Cape de Verde Islands. However, they were at a great distance, and I could not tell what I had best to do, for if I should be taken with a fresh wind, I might neither reach one nor the other. In this dilemma, as I was very pensive, I stepped into the cabin and sat me down, Jury having the helm. When on a sudden the boy cried out, "Master, master, a ship with a sail!" And the foolish boy was frightened out of his wits, thinking it must needs be some of his master's ships sent to pursue us, when I knew we had gotten far enough out of their reach. I jumped out of the cabin and immediately saw not only the ship, but what she was, viz., that it was a Portuguese ship, and, as I thought, was bound to the coast of Guinea for negroes. But when I observed the course she steered, I was soon convinced that she was bound some other way, and did not design to come any nearer to the shore, upon which I stretched out to sea as much as I could, resolving to speak with them if possible. With all the sail I could make, I found I should not be able to come in their way, but that they would be gone before I could make any signal to them. But after I had crowded to the utmost and began to despair, They, it seems, saw me by help of their perspective glasses, and that it was some European boat, which, as they supposed, must belong to some ship that was lost. So they shortened sail to let me come up. I was encouraged with this, and, as I had my patron's flag on board, I made a waft of it to them for a signal of distress, and fired a gun, both of which they saw, for they told me they saw the smoke, though they did not hear the gun. Upon these signals they very kindly brought to, and lay by for me, and in about 3 hours' time I came up with them. They asked me what I was, in Portuguese and in Spanish and in French, but I understood none of these. But at last a Scotch sailor, who was on board, called to me, and I answered him and told him I was an Englishman, and that I had made my escape out of slavery from the Moors at Salé. Then they bade me come on board, and very kindly took me in and all my goods. It was an inexpressible joy to me that any one will believe that I was thus delivered, as I esteemed it, from such a miserable and almost hopeless condition as I was in. And I immediately offered all I had to the captain of the ship as a return for my deliverance. But he generously told me he would take nothing from me, but that all I had should be delivered safe to me when I came to the Brazils. For, says he, I have saved your life on no other terms than I would be glad to be saved myself, and it may one time or other be my lot to be taken up in the same condition. Besides, says he, when I carry you to the Brazils, so great away from your own country, if I should take from you what you have, you will be starved there. Then I only take away that life I have given. No, Signor English, says he, Mr. Englishman, I will carry you thither in charity, and those things will help you buy your sustenance there, and your passage home again. Well, I hope you're enjoying the story so far, and I hope you'll come back and join me when we start reading chapter 4 in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.